That's at the last minute.
Why not, right? And there we go. Welcome into The Jump. I am Rachel Nichols alongside ESPN NBA insider Ramona Shelburne and host of the Low Post podcast. Welcome to Zach Lowe. Coming up this morning, Ramona broke a story on how the Warriors plan to safely fill the Chase Center to 50% capacity if they can get government approval. We will get into that in a little bit. First, though, so you've heard of the DEFCON system, right? It's what the United States military uses to show just how dicey things are for America at any given moment. DEFCON 5 is the most peaceful. DEFCON 1 is basically total nuclear annihilation. And I'm not sure exactly where hot mess is on the sliding scale, but I do know that's where you're going to find the Houston Rockets, who are one of the more tumultuous year-and-a-half runs anyone has seen in recent NBA memory. Remember, it was last July that Houston traded in a mountain of its assets to swap Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook. That started a domino of events that included trading Clint Capella, going all in on microball, an injury to Westbrook, a flameout in the NBA bubble, the departure of innovative coach Mike D'Antoni, the departure of former Executive of the Year Daryl Morey, and finally, this past week, reports of James Harden and Russell Westbrook being so deeply dissatisfied that Harden has questioned its direction, while Russ, according to The Athletic, has asked for a trade. This is not the kind of chaos that typically produces championships. In fact, since the Rockets were, quote, a hamstring away from beating Golden State a few years ago, their chances of winning a title have only seemed to diminish. And now the organization is at an extremely uncomfortable crossroads that got even more uncomfortable yesterday, which was Russ's 32nd birthday. The team Twitter account posted this. Awkward. Although the response was amazing. Our friend Worldwide Wob, they got the "we need to talk" and brought over a cake. Also this one, read the room. And dude, he doesn't even like you guys. And this one with Thunder GM Sam Presti. Well, yeah, you get it. Meanwhile, over on Instagram, ESPN posted a clip of Stephen A. Smith saying that Russ and James, quote, don't want to play with each other anymore. To which Russ actually replied in the comments, "It's my birthday, but I should say this is completely fabricated. You all have a good night." To further prove his point, Russ also got into the comments on Harden's IG, replying, "Appreciate it, Brody," after James also wished him a happy birthday. Although when TMZ caught up with Russ later in the evening, having a birthday dinner with his wife and some friends at an LA restaurant, Harden was not in attendance. Anyway, even if there isn't an ounce of friction between Russ and James as friends, clearly there are more issues with them playing together than they had hoped. Westbrook reportedly wants to get back to an offense where he has the ball in his hands more and where everyone on the team is equally accountable. It's not clear if those things can happen in Houston. But it's also not clear if the Rockets can really trade Westbrook either. Russ is indeed now 32 years old, and while earlier this year he played some of the best basketball of his career, that's still a warning light age for any player whose game is built on his athleticism, especially one with several knee and leg injuries under his belt. And that warning light flashes especially high once you figure in his contract. He is owed $132.6 million over the next 3 seasons and has a $47 million player option in the 2022-23 season. Is another team going to want to trade for that? Are they going to ask that Houston, which already attached a bunch of assets just to get Russ, now attach a few more to get rid of him? Then again, can Houston afford not to trade him if he really is so unhappy? The answer to that depends on where on the whole DEFCON scale you think the Rockets are trending. Will new GM Rafael Stone and new coach Stephen Silas be able to cool things down enough to keep the core of the team together? Or do Rockets fans need to head to their bomb shelters, preparing for the whole thing to explode? So, Zach, if there is a situation where the Rockets choose to move Russ, what move makes the most sense for him?
Well, if he wants to play Russ ball and Oklahoma City style ball, it's not going to be for a contender. So you can cross most of the contenders off the list. But I think the opposite question is the more interesting one. What makes sense for the Rockets? Because if you really want to talk DEFCON 1, DEFCON 1 is when James Harden requests a trade. And if you just salary dump Russ to the Knicks, like that's possible. You can just salary dump it to the Knicks. You could trade him to Charlotte for Nick Batum's expiring contract and maybe nothing else or something else. You know what signal that sends to James Harden? It's time to get out of here. Houston needs to get back real stuff, or at least a semblance of real stuff, and they cannot afford to give up any more draft picks, or we right away move to the next phase of this drama, which is that Harden looks around and says, wait, that's all you got for Russell Westbrook? So we can talk about what fits Russ, what team could fit Russ, what makes sense for him. But the more interesting question is the flip side. Can Houston find a deal that makes sense for them and appeases their franchise player?
Yeah, look, I like that Charlotte idea, Zach, because he's the signature athlete for Brand Jordan. I think that that's the exact kind of spot where you could see he would become the focal point of that team. That's kind of the way he had it in Oklahoma City, where he had his best years, where he was an MVP. That makes sense for the Hornets in the sense that, especially Michael Jordan, because you land a big star like this. It reminds me a little of when we were talking about what the Clippers could get for Blake Griffin when they signed him to that 5-year deal. You're probably not going to find anybody who wants to take on that many years and that much money for a player that, frankly, you need to build your team around to justify paying that much money. But the Detroit Pistons, who aren't going to get a star in free agency, if they can trade for him and keep him there for 5 years, the length of his deal actually is an asset. So I like the idea of Charlotte if Russ wants to go someplace. But I actually think it's just going to be hard for anything to happen here. And they might just have to figure out how to play together. Unless, as Zach says, the doomsday scenario, James Harden wants out too.
Yeah, I mean, it is complicated. And of course, it's a short off season. But during this off season, everyone is kind of in different places. We saw last night, Russ is in Los Angeles. So those face-to-face meetings where you can kind of cool the temperature are a little harder to have right now, too, in the age of COVID as well, which is the topic of our next conversation, guys. As several state governments continue to further lock down in defense of the coronavirus, Warriors owner Joe Lacob unveiling a plan that he hopes would allow 50% capacity in the Chase Center this season. Ramona, you broke this story earlier today. Joe Lacob, as you noted in your piece, he has a master's in public health from UCLA. He's made his fortune in biotech. This is an area, he's not just some fly-by-night, just, hey, let me